George? What are we doing here? What are we doing here? It's Red Fence!
It's Red Fence.
Do your homework! Good morning, Acton.
Good morning, George.
Why are we here all of a sudden on this morning?
We are here. We are here because the Barbie movie happened and we had to watch it.
We had to get in on this.
That's right. Because everyone's getting in on it.
Everyone's getting in on it.
And we've done our homework. This time we've gone to the movies instead of reading a book. And
We went to the movies. It was fun.
It was great. Yeah. A packed theater. Lots of laughter. It was good.
It was awesome. So, we're going to give our hot, radical, well-informed takes. But first, did you play with Barbies?
I did play with Barbies. It's probably like 1988 to 1993-ish. I was in on the late 80s, early 90s Barbies. I'd have friends from church come over for sleepovers, and we'd play Barbies and horses. Because I was like that girl who had horse posters all over her walls, you know, and watched The Black Stallion 20 times and took riding lessons, like the whole thing. So most of my Barbie play was really about Barbie going to the stables rather than living in her dream house or dating Ken, which is totally a reflection of what I was interested in. I wasn't boy crazy, I was horse crazy. And in fact, you know, Barbie was more of an accessory to the horses. Come to think of it, like the horses were really the point.
They never released like a horse for her, did they though?
I think they did. But,
Really?
Yeah, but they were too like fake looking for me. I wanted more realistic looking horses. So yeah.
She ride a horse with her legs being like.
I don't
maybe
know.
the later ones can move their hips.
I must have done it side saddle. It's funny, I can't really remember now.
Side saddle.
Because you're right. Her
Trad wife.
Can't really. Her legs can't really open right for that. Yeah, that's funny. But it's funny that like I was into Barbies and horses because it's quite hilarious in light of how important horses are to Ken in the movie.
Okay,
you know,
yeah.
so I'm like already bringing them together.
It's tremendous.
It's great. But yes, I loved the clothes. I loved the Barbie's outfits. I loved styling her hair and like building her houses out of blocks and stuff like that. Like I don't remember ever feeling like I was ugly compared to Barbie. I didn't play with her in that kind of way. I wasn't thinking of her like that. But I also had like a very loving, body-affirming childhood. I had a good relationship with my mom. I liked sports. I was active. I was happy.
You like sports?
Yeah, I was a bit of a tomboy. I liked to run. I was fast. You know, yeah, and I did horseback riding. I did a little bit of gymnastics. I was like an outdoorsy, run around kind of kid. I grew up with my brother. We would do like kickball and football and basketball like in the backyard with other kids. Like I do tackle football with the boys when I was, you know, little enough that they wouldn't kill me. But I loved that. I wrestled with my dad. Like I was very active, and so I was very comfortable in my body. I knew what my body was for. Like I didn't see myself as something to be looked at. I was like, I got stuff to do. You know, like that's what my body's for. So maybe that was sort of protecting me from using Barbie in a way in which she becomes a judge, right? So I just never, you know, like I never bought into this Barbie mythos that she's like your future self. And I always associated womanhood with motherhood, and Barbie's not mothering. So
she's not. She's the antithesis of motherhood.
Right. So I always had fun with Barbie, but I emerged kind of unscathed from what a lot of the later critiques of her were, and I would agree with those very common critiques, which the movie definitely plays with. But I never, even though I played with her, I never felt the harms that Barbie could cause. So.
Right, and ironically, Barbie was sort of proposed as the sort of, you know, the reverse of what children had mostly played with before, which was baby dolls.
Right.
It was the first doll that imagined them as not a mother.
Right. Right, which is interesting.
Which is interesting, and there's obviously a role for that, but, you know, trade-offs, I guess, you know, no solutions.
Yeah.
I had Barbies, and they had some nice clothes. Mm-hmm. I remember my mother being sad when I gave them away to a younger neighbor. Oh, yeah. Because I think my mother thought that someday they'd be collector's items, and I'm like, they're not in the box, Mom. Don't worry. I didn't really have an attachment. I have some toys from my childhood that I did save, but Barbies are not among them. Yeah. They're just dolls. Yeah. I like them, but I didn't think too hard about it. Yeah. I too didn't really see her as a model of femininity. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's when you grow up, when you see real women, you know that Barbie's not a model of a real woman. It's just a toy. It's just a... Barbie was already kind of like ironically representing the past ideal of like we understood that it was a outdated stereotype, and we played with her because the clothes it's too early. We played with her because the clothes were cool.
Yes.
I really admired the outfits for the sheer pleasure of all their tininess, all the tiny little shoes, the tiny little accessories.
Yes.
I mean, that element of it is like Legos.
Yes.
And I like Legos a lot, much more than I like Barbie. I mean, I think I played more imaginatively with My Little Pony than I did with Barbie.
Oh, I loved My Little Pony.
Yeah.
Well, and there it is. It's the horses.
Oh, yeah. And I wasn't even a horse
It's Barbie
girl.
as a horse.
It's Barbie as a horse, yes. Oh my god, yeah, okay.
That's right. Oh, we have so
topic.
many ponies. That's great. Maybe that's what Ken needed.
He needed a little pony. Oh yeah, like a brony. There's a whole subculture.
And that's a far right thing.
Kind of. Like,
yeah.
I was thinking that it's like incel adjacent. But
yes, which maybe that's what Greta Gerwig's trying to say.
Oh.
I hadn't thought about that.
Oh my god, I hadn't either, but she would know.
She would know.
She's of that period. Okay.
Wow.
So in hindsight, I really actually think that the magic of Barbie is that all her clothes fit her. My mother is always saying that the reason that women always look so good at their wedding is because the only garment in their entire life that they wear that's tailored to them.
Oh, that's right.
And that, of course, didn't used to be true.
Otherwise, you never do that. You don't like.
Well, I mean, not anymore. I mean, and now it's just like a pain. You have to buy your like prêt-à-porter. This is like actually a legitimate moment in fashion. Like prêt-à-porter means ready to wear, as in it doesn't have to be tailored for you. And that's like a fashion revolution in consumerism because then you can buy clothes faster if they're not tailored to you. There's no waiting time, right?
That's right.
But really, it dooms now in this age of like it's gone accelerated fast fashion. All the clothes are made out of fabrics that have no shape, and it's really hard for a lot of women, including me, I might say, to find clothes that they really like and feel good in. Like clothes shopping to me, I dread.
Yeah.
Not because I don't like wearing clothes or buying new clothes, because it's just like it's hopeless. Because you're stuck with whatever they're offering.
You're always compromising. You're like, this is kind of, I guess, 80% okay.
Yeah, it's like
do you ever have that 100% perfect?
Reasonably priced, looks good, wears well. Pick two.
That's perfect. That's perfect.
Well, it's based on a similar thing in computer science.
Yeah.
You don't get it all. You never get it all. You have to. Yeah. And I think Barbie epitomizes this magical world where all your clothes are actually yours. And of course, it's easy because Barbies are like made by machine. They're all the same. And it's a doll, and so that's why you can have clothes that fit you. But, we used to actually live in a world where women's clothes were made by women in this exact way, where all your clothes would be yours. They were bespoke. Yes, and in my I think we could radically improve women's lives if all of their clothes were tailored for them. It's on my list of philanthropic causes to fund if I ever get the opportunity. Because I think that Barbie isn't about having a stereotypical body. It's about the joy of personalization. Yeah. Of a wardrobe where you look and you feel great. So, I mean, when I think about Barbie, I think about the clothes. I don't think about the doll.
That's fascinating.
I think about that world where somebody took the time and the care, and you have that web of relationships. Yes. Where your clothes are made for you. Mm-hmm.
Well, there's like a meaningful kind of sisterhood, right? Like
exactly.
Women with skill, knowing how to make clothes. I have a cousin who's like a seamstress, like who does like reenactment era clothes, and it's amazing what she can do.
Was the type of seamstress that made the samples. Oh. So you have to be perfect. Because it's all done most of it is done by hand because you're only making like one.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is real legit skill.
No, she was like incredibly talented. She would make my grandmother dresses off movies.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. She could just see it in her eye and make
what
the pattern.
To do. That's incredible. Yeah.
So, did you ever make kids for your clothes when they were little?
I did. That's what you make kids for your clothes.
I mean, it's too fucking early! Did you manufacture your children to fit the clothes that were already marketed?
I never made
Maybe that's why baby clothes are so great, because they fit most babies, because babies are like, except for the scale, they're all proportioned the same.
I relearned how to sew like every 4 years. And I was like, I should do this. I'd be like, I made some drapes. I hated doing this. And then like I put the machine away and like forget how to do it. And they're like, oh, I should probably make some, and then every few years I pull it out and watch YouTube videos and relearn how to sew.
Did your mother make clothes for you?
She did a couple of times. I remember like a little jumper she made me in 1st grade. But interestingly, it's actually my husband got in the habit years ago of every Easter making an Easter dress for our daughter.
Oh,
like
interesting.
They would go pick out the fabric together at Joann Fabrics.
Is he a better sewer than you?
Yeah, because it's like technical. It's precise. That's the thing.
It's so he can do anything that involves engineering like that.
Oh yeah. He's engineering brain. He's very good. He's very good at that. But that was sort of like a father-daughter thing. Like,
that's cute.
We still have the little dresses that he made, and one of them was from My Little Pony fabric. She
Hell
picked out
yeah.
a My Little Pony dress.
Hell yeah.
So cute. So adorable.
Because I think it really was. It was incredibly normal to make your children's clothes.
Yeah, I know.
It was a way to save money, which is actually not true anymore.
Right.
In
not
fact,
anymore.
I joke that the best way to if you ever want to make your own clothes, the best thing to do is go buy cheap clothes that are oversized and then make your own clothes out of them.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Because it's literally cheaper to buy the piece of clothing than it is to buy the fabric. Because of the...
Yeah, my husband's mom would make a lot of her own clothes. Like she knew how to do that, and she would always sew all of his like Halloween costumes and stuff. Like that was such a thing. I think of that now. I'm like, wow, that's to sew stuff for yourself would now be a mark of. Rather than like, oh, that's thrifty or saving money. Now it would be like,
niche,
oh, it's very niche. It's very bougie. Yeah, it's totally saying something opposite than it used to mean.
Yes.
Really interesting.
But it really used to be common. I remember making some clothes for Barbie.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, like stupid clothes, like bad clothes. Because it's really hard to sew at that scale.
Small,
you have to be quite proficient. I wasn't that proficient.
Like I could probably manage like a vest, holes for arms, and anything beyond that, I don't think I could have done it.
But yeah, I really think it's about
great point.
It's about like feeling comfortable with your body. I don't know. That's just my take.
I love it.
All right. Did you like the movie?
You go first.
Okay. So it's a good film. Although, like, a lot of the film, I was sitting there kind of squirmy and kind of mad at all the cringy bad feminism.
Yes, yeah.
And I was like, oh, this movie, it's destroying people's minds. Like, calm down, George. Until I realized that the movie itself was undermining it. It was doing it, like, it was cleverly, but not really that subtly.
Yes.
Naming and shaming. So, and I like the music, too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad we went. I'm really glad we're talking about it, because I feel like our take is awesome.
Yes, I agree.
We have some awesome takes.
I enjoyed the movie most of the time, though I was like continually conscious of the fact that I was watching a movie. Like, the movie is so self-aware. It's so meta-modern.
It's not it's not lose yourself in the moment.
You can, and I always I like to watch movies where I just totally lose myself in it, and I'm totally, completely empathizing and transported into it. And, like, the movie wouldn't let me do that.
Well, because it's about
just
dolls.
Right. And so, so that was hard. Yeah, I didn't care for that aspect of it. But, like, I mostly just love the character of Barbie herself. Like, if I forget all the other parts of the movie and just think Barbie and her trajectory and her transformation. Like, I loved her. I thought she was delightful. And a lot of the subplots were lame. They were nonsensical, but the sets were eye candy. They were glorious. Having grown up playing with Barbies, and they're like, oh my gosh, the camper set,
Yeah, it was
visually, it's really fun. It really very nostalgic, and that's what they're marketing to us. They're marketing to us.
They're marketing to
middle-aged women.
Yeah, for sure.
And the Barbies and the Kens were so playful. It was very fun. Like, it's possible to watch it just on like, oh, the fun level.
Ryan Gosling is like. He's born to play that role.
Yes, he was. Yeah. He was great. He was hilarious. And I do want to add, like, before we dig further into it, this podcast is going to be full of spoilers. So, and we're not going to describe the plot of the movie to you. So if you haven't seen it yet...
You need to do your homework. This is Red Fence.
That's right. Do your homework. Go to the movie.
Go to the movie. What are you just going to... Okay, like, 2 people who haven't seen the movie are going to listen to this. Everyone else who's listening has seen the movie.
Well, I'm the queen of caveats, so I have to.
Oh, okay.
I have to do it. So we're just going to jump right in and critique it. So you're duly warned.
All right. Because this is Red Friends, we read other people. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to read you. This Twitter reaction is by someone at the Neon Requiem. His name is Rudy. I got this through the Weekly Dish. Yeah. Andrew Sullivan mentioned it in his weekly email. Mm-hmm. So we're going to start with this Twitter take, which I appreciated. Mm-hmm. Someone's reaction to the Barbie movie is the perfect indicator of who is truly an independent thinker and who is indoctrinated into an ideology when it comes to how we portray both sexes in popular culture in 2023. This may shock some, but Barbie is not the far-left woke propaganda fest so many American conservatives claim it is. Neither is it the opposite. It's actually very South Park-esque in its approach. It takes the piss out of all extremist viewpoints on both sides. It's what woke people would describe as transphobic, yet one of the Barbies is trans. It's what misogynists would describe as misandrist, yet showcases misandry as being just as real as misogyny. It's what classic feminists would describe as anti-motherhood while defending the fact that it's okay to want to be a mother despite what lib femmes would have you believe. Essentially, it's telling you that patriarchy doesn't work and that the answer isn't matriarchy either. Mm-hmm. It's telling you that liberal feminism doesn't work because actual feminism is about equality, not supremacy. It's telling you that the real world isn't as black and white as males rule everything or males ought to rule nothing. Mm-hmm. It's centrist and smart. And everyone who hates it for supposedly being woke or loves it for supposedly being woke isn't centrist enough nor smart enough to understand it. And that's the point.
I love it.
That's someone who's obviously paying the monthly fee to write a very long tweet.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I agree that this movie is in many senses using, I wouldn't say South Park-esque, but I would say like using a woke grammar, a consciously woke grammar. Mm-hmm. But to actually come kind of straight out and say that woke feminism is at best tired and old, and at worst, pretty dangerous. Yeah. I could actually do a reading of this film where, as this tweet just mentioned, mm-hmm. where, you know, we have a cross-sex identified man playing a Barbie, Dr. Barbie. That's mm-hmm. Is that intentional? And where it goes without remark, although you can easily mark him by his voice if you know about this, right? So I could do a reading of this film as a takedown of transhumanism and how, to the extent that feminism has been seen to endorse it, is courting disaster. But, I mean, as tempting as that is, I don't think that's really I think that's a minor point in this film. The major point is about women and about the difference between being a doll and being an adult human female. And that is very specific. Yes. All those things. Adult, human, female. Yes. Like, it literally is, all like, super important. I mean, the best adult joke about Barbie is that the dolls have no sex organs. Yes. And I mean, like, and every girl grew up, got, like, the phase before you stopped playing with your dolls was always the phase where you mm-hmm. made them fuck. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's every...
We called it humping. The Barbies
humping,
were humping.
Yes. Well, I'm being extra explicit because this is reference. But yes, you make your Barbies hump. We definitely did not use the F word as 12-year-olds. We wouldn't have used this language then, but now we are of the age that went through this trajectory, right? Now we could describe Barbie and Ken as gender nullified. Right. They have no visible external genitals. They only have the region of the body, apparently undamaged, where the genitals are intended to be. Mm-hmm. So this movie takes that joke seriously, because gender nullification is this horrible thing that people who are like non-binary or whatever, or abomination, or mm-hmm. can get a surgery to make themselves look basically like a doll. Yeah. And this movie is taking that horror or that joke seriously, right? Mm-hmm. It draws explicit attention to it. I mean, one of the best moments in the film is that when Barbie is getting sexually harassed by construction workers. So complete, like, utter stereotypical feminist complaint, right? Barbie tells these human men, totally matter-of-factly, that she doesn't have a vagina and Ken doesn't have a penis.
I love the look on his face when she said it out loud.
And it's like they're doing it to say, like, you can't sexually harass me because I don't have genitals. Right. And so this film is too new that the writers and directors could think that this line wouldn't be heard in the context of the trans thing. Right. They knew that people like turfy women like us are going to go see it and hear that. Yes. So they know that it will be impossible to hear that line and not think to yourself, oh shit, removing genitals is now considered a sign of special magical social status. And then mm-hmm. reflect on that as, like, gross and weird, like, totally, utterly world turned upside down it is to normalize that. Right. So in that large sense, the movie is a giant middle finger to transhumanism. Yeah. About how it is so much better to have sexual desire, sexual function, than it is to have the opposite. Mm-hmm. Conservatives and classical liberals are now united that normal sex is good. Woo! I mean, this is like some sort of promised land coalition that, you know, in the 1980s with the moral majority and we would have been like, some people would have just like given their right arm to have this coalition, right? Of
coalition
the willing,
of good sex.
Right, and now, but both parties are so captured that they can't even capitalize on it.
It's so sad.
But anyway, I digress.
Yeah.
So as I started to say, I think the brilliance of this movie is that it doesn't let you forget for 1 minute the difference between a human and a doll.
Yeah.
That scene where Barbie declares she is a doll and Ken is too is so spot on because it's a super deadpan way of declaring that sex is not an idea.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, children who play with dolls don't know this. They are children. They don't, or at least they shouldn't, have an understanding about why bodies matter. That is something, I mean, in a sexual way. Yeah. That is something that comes with sexual awakening and cannot be explained to children before that point.
Right.
I mean, even when a child asks where do babies come from, they don't get it. They don't.
Right.
You can explain what sex is, but you can't explain why people want to do that to one another.
Right.
That doesn't make any sense.
It makes no sense until the feelings have emerged.
Exactly. Yeah. So gender identity, though, is teaching children and teenagers that sex really is an idea. I mean, that's what Judith Butler essentially said.
Right.
She said, sex not real, it's an idea.
Right.
When, of course, it isn't an idea. It's not just an idea. It's reality. It's turning humans into dolls. Saying that if you change the hair, the clothes, or the chest, that you change something on the inside. Yeah. And you can absolutely make a grow-up doll, right? That I've never seen, never heard of, but they show it in the film.
Yeah. The skipper that gets boobs.
Yeah, the Barbie that, like, I guess it's some sort of, like, air thing where the breasts grow and the hips expand maybe, but like, and that's priceless, but it's only a visual synecdoche for the far more complicated internal and invisible changes that take a girl into womanhood.
Right.
And when we change bodies to make them mimic the outward, this sort of secondary sex characteristics, we're doing a doll thing.
That's right.
Because we're fucking up the inside for just the synecdoche on the outside.
That's right, to gain the appearance when the internal reality is not
exactly
changeable.
So, in this context, the inclusion of a cross-sex fantasist male in Barbie Land is so on the nose as to be actually based. Because in Barbie Land, the dolls are sex stereotypes.
That's right.
In that they are depictions of sex without sex.
Exactly.
There is no meaning to being male or female because no one has genitals.
That's right.
And pregnant Barbie is like she's not an exception. I love how the film immediately pointed out that a pregnant doll was too weird.
Yes.
Uncanny, which literally in the German means unhomely.
Oh, interesting.
Oh. Sorry, I have to go like all graduate school on you right now. Because this movie is just like, it's like my inner graduate student. It's terrible. So the doll was discontinued because it's too weird, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so she's not an exception. There's still no sex, right? Because she's the synecdoche of pregnancy, right?
Uh-huh.
No one got her pregnant, and she's never having the baby.
Right.
No sex.
Perpetual
right?
gestation. Right. Doesn't make sense.
So against this, that's the sort of setup, right? The hero's journey of the film around Barbie revolves entirely around motherhood.
Yeah.
Barbie becomes human by getting an actual female reproductive system and by taking on a name that reflects her having come from a human, suitably, in this case, her mother.
I love it.
But of course, you know, Ruth Handler got her name from her father, so it's not like there's no fathers, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're there.
Mm-hmm. She
becomes the daughter, Barbara Handler, literally, because the ghost of Ruth Handler explains that she named Barbie after her own daughter. So now Barbie is becoming the human daughter, right? She becomes the daughter with the capacity for motherhood. That's implicit.
Yes.
This is so entirely what Barbie was not.
Mm-hmm.
Because Barbie was a tool for girls to imagine womanhood before they could really understand what womanhood felt like.
That's right. Barbie is
because even the humping, you don't really. Your Barbies aren't humping when you really sexually awakened. Once
you
that's put away childish things.
That's right. You put the Barbies away.
Yeah.
Once you get it. Yeah. You're exactly right. Sex is not an idea. Gender identity turns sex into an idea that is as fluid and bespoke as changing outfits.
And that's the way they sell the surgery.
Yes.
Top surgery sounds like I'm going to get a clothing, I'm going to alter my body in the way that you can successfully alter clothes.
Right. As if
that's how surgery
you're wearing a meat,
works.
You heard the phrase meat suit?
Yes.
Right. It's like you're sewing your meat suit bespoke to cover the inner gender identity or something. Like, it's the skin as clothing. That's sewn. It's literally sewn. It's stitched.
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah.
So, and you're right, that Barbie and Ken are stereotypes precisely because they have no genitals, they have no hormones, they have no internal juiciness, right? Like, they have no capacity to reproduce and form families. And this is why it makes sense that Barbie and Ken don't end up together, because he has no penis and she has a vagina. So she needs a real man. That's why she leaves. And I love the point you make that Barbie gains a name, gains a history, gains a mother, and joins this stream of potential mothers by getting reproductive anatomy, right? And this also means that she'll join a world where women can be objectified and experience sexual violence, right? Like her skating.
Or maybe not sexual violence. Like, there's no sexual violence in the film, but there's, like, implied threat of sexual violence. Like, right. She understands that men objectify her. Right. And will. And there's nothing she can do about it.
That's right. And it's just fascinating. Like, she feels it instantly.
Although she does have that thing about, like, that moment where she's like, maybe we should get different clothes.
Yes.
Which is kind of
That's a little trad, too. Yeah. To feel like, maybe I should dress differently. Because she's totally got, like, that.
Although they were teasing her because it was the 80s throwback.
Yeah. It's like
that was a joke.
Aerobics clothes.
The period. That was a joke for us because we knew that period.
Right. But even so, Barbie still thinks it's worth it to make this transition into this fleshly world where there is threat, right? So mortal womanhood and motherhood and getting old are worth it to her despite the suffering and the limitations, right? So she's deciding to grow up, which is also growing old, right? It's brave and it's good. And so Barbie moves beyond bullshit feminism where careerism is just marketed to girls as a product, as dreams that you can buy. Like, she is done. And I love it. And it struck me that Barbie came out in 1959, like right before the pill hit the market in 1960, right before The Feminine Mystique was published in 1962, right? So Barbie ends up riding the waves of feminism as it grew in the 60s and 70s. So she was created before second wave feminism, but she was, of course, adapted to it and co-opted by it.
Absolutely.
To become something different, right? And so Barbie became a part of the self-actualization trend, right? Like Barbie, like playing with Barbie is playing with your aspirational future self, which is unlike playing with a baby doll in which the toy is another person who needs your care, right? So with baby dolls, you practice relationship and care of another. With Barbie dolls, you practice like self-care and preening and personal success. Like, it's a totally different thing. They're both dolls, but the role the doll assigns you by the fact of what it is, it's just totally different. So the toy tells you how to play with it. So the move from baby doll to Barbie doll is the move from nurturing to accessorizing.
Yeah, from relationships of care to consumerists. Yeah.
Consumerism and career, yeah. So, do you remember that creepy drawing you showed me of the girl with breasts and genitals like sliced out like these rectangular slabs of flesh that are now like lying on the ground?
How could I possibly forget?
It's very Salvador Dali-esque. We'll have to put it in the show notes.
We can put it in the show notes.
It's this picture of removing markers of sex to avoid the troubles associated with sexual maturation, right? It's a picture of female transition. It's not becoming a man, it's unbecoming a woman. It's unwomaning.
It's desexing.
Desexing, exactly. And the Barbie movie is the reverse of this thing. Like, she starts out as a neutered plastic, non-sexed, feminine stereotype that is purely surfacey, and by the end she gains real functioning breasts, uterus, vagina, like all the parts. So what young girls in our culture are fleeing from, Barbie consciously chooses to step into with tears, a lot of tears, with no illusions, and with an acceptance of her own mortality. That is real feminism. It's not a flight. It's not a flight from being female, and and it's not being, what do you call it the other day, like Hello Kitty girl boss, like the career Barbies. It's not that. It's a brave yes to real life that is sexed all the way down. So,
yeah, I mean,
that's why I love her trajectory.
It's just I was thinking that we'd end up just like complaining about the film, but I was just like so pleasantly surprised. It just fits really into our what we talk about all the time on this pod. I mean, it's really based. It's reality-based feminism. It honors the female embodied experience, although it has to pretend to be following the same old tired third way sex positive liberated girl night feminism. So it pays the lip service it requires, but the tongue is so far in the cheek it's impossible to miss.
But some people are missing it.
Well, I mean, I guess you see. At least it was a pink whistle to me.
Yeah.
But maybe I'm engaging in the same kind of like rose-colored. I don't know. I don't know. But I feel like we can bring some receipts. So I think Barbie is the steelman case for transhumanism. You know, like strongman versus steelman, where you make the best case for the opponent, right? She's beautiful and healthy, but she's plastic, sexless, fake. Mm-hmm. She isn't used to liquid inside her, and so there's nothing juicy about her. Those are the choices. You can't have sexual relationships or reproduction if you de-sex yourself. Right. And I mean, I have to confess, I've listened to so many fucking videos about people who get these surgeries and have all the problems, and like, that's the problem. The problem is that, like, you've changed your body, but now your body's broken. Right. There are no solutions. You have to accept the trade-off. Yep. You can feel and fuck and make children, but you can only do so if you accept that the world is dangerous, some men are bad, your body will fail you, your children may disappoint or disown you, and then you will die. Yep.
There it is.
Spoken like someone who has no kids. But if you are lucky, you will grow old around people you love, and your children you love who love you, and younger people will see past your wrinkles and see your beauty. Yeah. Which is really virtue. Yes. This film obviously cannot talk about virtue because that's another woke shibboleth. Right. Thou shalt not, say that choices matter. Right. But it slips in the reference via the matriarch as beautiful.
I loved it. And Barbie says it. She's like, you're so beautiful.
Right.
And the old lady's like, I know.
Exactly. It was pitch perfect because that woman at the bus stop is old and happy, which means she is wise. Yes. Which implies that she has cultivated virtue.
Yeah. It's all embedded. It's all the unspoken. But it's there.
It's
and that's the deeper meaning of, like, the parable of Barbie is these things, not like the woke grammar on the outside. Yeah. So that's fascinating. I love this idea that, Barbie begins as not juicy. That's the perfect word.
It really is. Because it gets at, obviously juiciness is the point. If the film ends with her literally going to the gynecologist.
Exactly.
I mean, that is the best possible spin.
I love it.
You can put on getting a pelvic exam.
That's right. Right. So Barbie starts out not juicy. Like, she can't even properly drink water.
There's no liquid in Barbie Land. That's right. It's all fake.
That's right.
There's no shower water. There's no ocean water. There's no liquids.
Yeah, and I mean, and liquid like water. It's such a symbol of life.
It's substrate for life. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, and so she goes out into the real world and she tries to drink and she does the fake drink move and just spills all over her. It's great. But she gets juicier as the story goes on, right? Right. And we see that she not only learns to drink a cup of tea with her creator, right? Like, she finally is really carefully like, okay, where does this go? She actually drinks the tea. But she also learns to cry, right? And that's not liquid coming in from the outside. That's her own liquid showing itself, right? And so I kept thinking while watching the movie, Barbie's tears are important, right? Like, she's opening herself to beauty. She's opening herself to existential dread. She's opening herself to questions and fear and loss and rejection and aging. And her tears aren't a sign of weakness, but a sign of bravery, because she's choosing into this mortal realm of hardship and relationship. And so her tears symbolize both juiciness and virtue, which is really interesting. Since women's tears have tended to be caricatured as being, overly emotional or hysterical or irrational, right? And so as young women enter puberty, the amount of negative emotion they experience goes up and stays up permanently.
Yeah, this is a big Jordan Peterson thing.
Oh,
he even says that. Did you listen to the Parker post, Kelly J. King?
Yes, I did. Yeah,
he talks about that.
Exactly.
Well, he talks to all his interviewees. Yes. But this was a good story to tell in front of her. Yes. Because...
Yeah. It's fitting.
It's fitting.
Yeah, so for women, our average levels of neuroticism increase with puberty, and they just stay above that of men from that point on. And it's just a fact of female life, and it's so interesting that this journey of Barbie into sexual awakening and maturation is simultaneously a journey into more sorrow. And that inevitability of female suffering, which you can't blame on oppression.
Exactly.
You can't blame it on the patriarchy.
She doesn't cry about those things.
No. That's something that second and third wave feminism aren't good at talking about and taking seriously, because it's too embodied. Yeah. Because emotions are what you experience in your flesh, in your body. Like, it's the whole of you. It's not some like sort of spiritual disembodied thing. Like, the feelings are fleshy. They come in your body. And so, yeah, that's all connected. And that's all connected with virtue, too. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, and so that's the subtext. But the text is this shitty, tired, third wave feminism. So we need to talk about the famous speech, Gloria's famous speech about how it's impossible to be women. I need to thoroughly express my disdain for this speech.
Yes.
And before we begin, it's funny to me how often I see people, because I've been reading and watching some reviews of Barbie. Plenty of people take this speech totally seriously, as if it's like the climax of the movie, as if it's brilliant.
I just don't see how that's possible.
It's the, this kind of preach it girl moment, but it's not. It's a Hallmark card.
It's a shitty Hallmark card.
Yeah. And so, yes, we need to critique it. So, I don't know if you've seen the TV show Poker Face.
Hell fucking yeah!
Yeah, you like Poker Face?
I'm obsessed with Columbo, and it's an homage to Columbo.
Is it really? I didn't know
seriously.
That. My mom watched Columbo.
I am gonna write a Substack where I do a post on every episode of Columbo.
Really?
Fuck yeah.
Okay, that's awesome.
That's like
good. I'm
bucket
glad
listing
you know
for me.
Poker Face. Yeah. Right, so the heroine has this ability to always tell when someone isn't speaking the truth. And the shtick of the show is that whenever she notices it, she really says, in her smoker voice, bullshit. So we're gonna Poker Face.
Awesome.
Because I was like, oh, you're gonna say bullshit all the time. So I was like, I gotta set this up.
Yeah. So, oh, okay. Now I feel even better about this. Okay. First line. It is literally impossible to be a woman. Right away. Bullshit. What does that even mean? It's literally not impossible. Because here we are, you and me, womaning. Mm-hmm. God, and we didn't even get 8 hours of sleep, and we're still here. I mean, and the use of literally there is so because literally is the new like. Uh-huh. It's that new word that you use for. I mean, there's a whole linguistic tangent that I won't go on. But is this impossible to be a woman? The latest twist on Simone de Beauvoir, one is not born, one becomes a woman theory of feminism. Mm-hmm. Whereas then we were forced into it, it was unnatural, and we were wedged into it, as if our feet were shaped to wear high heels when they're not. So this is the newest version of that. We can't even get there from here. You can't even achieve it. Yeah. What the fuck? Women exist because girls are born and they mature. Oh wait, unless you fuck with their puberty, yeah, maybe then it wouldn't be possible to be a woman. But otherwise, no, it's not impossible. It's inevitable.
Yes, I second that. I mean, you could only say it's impossible to be a woman if being a woman is an achievement rather than a given.
There you go.
So it's bogus language. Sex is not achieved. Sex is not assigned at birth.
Amen.
It's a given. It's a gift. So relax a little. You can't actually fail at this, ladies. You can't.
Just I read something when my friend was dying, I happened to read this thing by, I want to say Samuel Johnson. He was one of those factotum types. He was good at everything. He wrote a lot of shit about a lot of shit. I'll just correct myself in the show notes. But he talks about dying, and he says, your body knows how to die. And I was like, oh, fuck. That means I could just, I don't have to worry.
Let it happen. That's so interesting.
Because your body knows. It's an organism. It knows how to do that.
Well, that's exactly the same as giving birth. Because, oh my gosh, how am I going to have this baby? It's your body knows what to do. Your consciousness isn't there.
You just got to get out of the way.
You have to get out of the way and let your body do it. I mean, that's right. Giving birth and dying.
I have a friend,
but meaningful.
Okay, I have a friend who had her first child last year, and she said it was the most frightening thing she'd ever experienced in her whole life.
You have no control.
She was scared shitless.
Yeah.
I mean, she was just terrified.
It is kind of traumatizing. Your first one when you don't know what's happening. And if you don't know if you can trust, you don't know if you can trust your body.
And you haven't really been taught to trust your body.
That's right.
Very much.
Yeah. But I mean, a good birth class is literally teaching you to trust your body.
Oh, okay.
So that's what it's doing.
So yeah, impossible to be a woman. That's
bullshit. All right, next one. You are so beautiful and so smart, and it kills me that you don't think you're good enough. We have to be extraordinary, but somehow we're always doing it wrong.
Ugh. This is just more pablum. I mean, it's true that that young women especially are beautiful and smart, and they don't know it. That is it. But, I mean, that is just, it's so banal as to be a truism. We all have self-doubt, especially women, because we just talked about your level of neuroticism, and negative emotion is going to go up and stay up. So we all have this. We all have fears that we are unlovable and undeserving of the love and care shown us. Even boys have those fears. Mm-hmm. But this is just pathologizing this human experience. It does no one good and harms many.
Yeah. Pathologizing human experience. I like that. That's a good way to say it. And this feeling of constant failure, it's not unique to women. It's not a product of the patriarchy. It's nobody's fault. It's just living with limits and being self-aware of them. That's it.
And now we get into the really, really terrible part.
Oh, yeah.
This is you have to be thin, but not too thin. And you can never say you want to be thin. You have to say you want to be healthy, but you also have to be thin. You have to have money, but you can't ask for money because that's crass. You have to be a boss, but you can't be mean. You have to lead, but you can't squash other people's ideas. You're supposed to love being a mother, but don't talk about your kids all the damn time. You have to be a career woman, but also always be looking out for other people. I mean, this is just not reality. This is not the reality of the vast majority of women. Not just American women, but like women, like overall, worldwide. I mean, how many women is their biggest concern being thin? That's a Hollywood bullshit thing. Yeah. And in Hollywood, you don't actually have to say you want to be healthy. You just go on Ozempic to lose 5 pounds. I mean, that's a real thing. Barry Weiss is fucking on Ozempic because she fucking lives in LA or San Francisco or whatever.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, it's because you just, if you're of that set, you have to do what they do. Oh, man. It's a body cult. Ugh. I mean, yeah, I think about, like, I've gained 40 pounds in the last 25 years, but, like, it's like, it's not what I think about all the time.
Right.
Like, I think about a lot of shit, and I just let all those thoughts happen because they're just in my brain.
That's right.
You know, it's not the center of my existence. Like, fuck off. I mean, money, again, okay. Another Hollywood obsession, right? We've erased the entire history of pre-industrial life. You know, we just work or we don't work, and neither is acceptable. What the fuck? We can't ask... I just don't even understand what planet these people are on. Most women are in the labor force. In fact, there was this glowing review of the jobs report, the most recent jobs report on the PBS NewsHour, which we call the woke news in my house, and about how the workforce participation rate among women had risen again, was very high. Because, I mean, you know, the she session, a lot of women had to stop working because, you know, someone had to take care of the kids during COVID. But, like, why are we celebrating this? Mm-hmm. It's not because they are striving to self-fulfillment. That's like what Mary Harrington says. Right. Like, you know...
That's right.
You know, it's they're working because if they didn't work, they wouldn't have food and shelter.
Right.
If mothers have to earn, other people are raising your children.
Exactly.
This is not what we should be celebrating. I don't think. I mean, sure, some women want to work, and I'm not going to judge it. I mean, my own mother was like that. She did not want to, like, she wanted to have a career. Yeah. Although she did stay home with me much longer.
Yeah.
She stayed home with me the entire time until I went to daycare. Yeah. I was not in daycare as a baby. Mm-hmm. And I think that's good because I am a friggin' sensitive kid, so I imagine daycare at 6 weeks would have fucked me up. You know, so I'm not going to judge a woman who wants to work, but I think that for the young children, all women should stay home. I think it's better for the child. And I think also most women would choose to stay home until their children go to school. Yeah. Maybe even, like, till their children are in middle school, you know? Yeah. Most women would choose to be supported and stay home with their children when they are young. Yeah. And I have no doubt this would benefit children.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you 100% on that. Like, that was my choice, and most of the women I know, that's their choice, or that's their aspiration, if they can afford it, right? But it really is about, a lot of it is about the money. Like,
well, I mean, it used to be normal. You used to pay men more because you knew they were supporting a family. And
they were not just working for themselves.
That's sexist, but it's also, like, for a purpose.
Right. It's care. Yeah. But back to this, Gloria's like, not too much of this and not too much of that. Like, her frustration with balance, you know, be a boss, but don't be mean. Love your kids, but don't talk too much about them. Take care of yourself, but also take care of other people.
It's like the work-life balance conundrum.
Yeah, right. But it's like, this is not a problem to be complained about. This is literally a description of what's called the golden mean, or the golden middle way. It's the desirable middle between two extremes, one of excess and the other of deficiency. This is like basic Aristotelian virtue ethics. It's don't be a coward and don't be foolhardy, be brave. Like right down the middle, right? Don't be lustful and, you know, don't be promiscuous and don't be a prude, but like be faithfully sensual and intimate with your partner. Like right in the middle. So to complain, like this woman does, is just to complain about how hard it is to live virtuously. She's like saying, it's hard to be good. Like, yeah, that's a human universal, folks. Like, this is feminist cant. It doesn't have meaning.
Well, it's also this very narrow band of women who have careers.
Yes.
And, like...
It's a class-based...
It's a very limited class vision of the problems of careerism and raising children.
Right.
I mean, we used to say in graduate school, every grad student needs a wife. Like, as a joke, because, you know, we got it. It was...
Yeah. You're like, I need someone to help me.
I need
with
support. I need someone to cook my meals and remind me to eat. And, you know...
Oh, like, life takes partnership. Who
yeah.
thought?
Yeah. And this idea where you're like, I mean, it's setting you up to fail because it's trying to get you to believe that what's asked of you is from the beginning impossible because you're female, and that's not how reality works. I mean, when you step away from that, I think you come to a point where you're like, oh, that's not how life really is. That's not really... You grow up and you realize if you want to do one thing, you have to give up another thing.
That's right.
You have to be serious. It gets worse.
Yeah.
You have to answer for men's bad behavior, which is insane, but if you point that out, you're accused of complaining. You're supposed to stay pretty for men, but not so pretty that you tempt them too much or that you threaten other women because you're supposed to be a part of the sisterhood. I mean, this just doesn't resonate with me at all. It rings hollow. It's more bullshit feminism. Yeah. We have to hold men accountable. And that's not easy when we're taught from a very young age to ignore our gut instincts about what feels good to us.
Yeah.
Beauty isn't a weapon. It's a force of nature. It has a role in intimacy, and I would say modesty exists for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah, I will say this one part, I resonated with it just a little because I grew up in evangelical purity culture, which really valued modesty, and encouraged women to be self-aware about the possibility of tempting a brother in Christ to sin or to lust, right? So as a young woman, I really did feel this pull, like, be beautiful, but don't be sexy, right? And yet I agree with you that, beauty is a force of nature. It serves the purpose of sparking an interest in intimacy. And so it's just a fact of life we have to deal with, that some women are prettier than others, and it's going to be hard for us. It's hard for the pretty ones. That comes with its own set of problems, right? And it's hard for the not pretty ones. Like, I feel it. I get it.
And it's unfair.
It is unfair, right? Because life's unfair.
Life's unfair. I mean, you're supposed to be learning that. I mean, like, of all the things my mother ever said to me, I feel like that's the one she had to remind me of most frequently. It was really hard to accept that as a young child. Yeah. I have a very overdeveloped sense of whatever that is. That makes you, I don't know,
like, belt out. It's not fair.
But just like that very, like, highly attuned sense of moral values. Like, when something is unjust, when I perceive something to be unjust, I get really extra upset about it.
Right. So you had to face early the fact that life's not fair, and that's not because people have gone and screwed it up. It's because that's literally, at bottom, it's just that way.
Yeah.
Like, it's been that way before people were here.
Like, and you have to accept that it's gonna feel horrible, and there's not always something you can do about it. You just have to learn to, like, adjust.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, all right, so next part. But always stand out and always be grateful, but never forget that the system is rigged. So find a way to acknowledge that, but also always be grateful.
I mean, this is pure bullshit. This is goop quality back business. I mean, it's not even worth any more of my breath to critique it.
Yeah. So
because it's setting... Okay, I'll critique it more. I'll waste more breath. Because, like, it's setting you up to have no agency. Like, gratitude exists in a nexus of service, care, and duty to one another.
Yep.
You cannot achieve that if your entire worldview is we are puppets and someone is manipulating us in this rigged system. I mean, this is why, like, DEI and white supremacy and white guilt and all that shit, that's why it doesn't work. That's why it's corrosive. Because it never actually gives agency back to people.
Right. Yeah, and here's the next part. You have to never get old, never be rude, never show off. Never be selfish, never fall down, never fail, never show fear, never get out of line. It's too hard. It's too contradictory, and nobody gives you a medal or says thank you. And it turns out, in fact, that not only are you doing everything wrong, but also everything is your fault.
Again, this is just the pure pathologizing of the natural struggles of human existence. And you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of those videos that libs of TikTok repost about, like, Gen Zers having a crisis because someone misgenders them.
Yeah.
It's like a fake hurt.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, it's not real. I mean, I mean, it is real to those people because they've been living this brainwashed, panopticon of performative intimacy or whatever what is that phrase from, like, performative disclosure, performative disclosure porn, all those things, right?
Yep.
We try, we fail, we try again, we fail again, we learn too, and we age, and it's okay because we develop the social fabric that supports us to do it.
Yes.
Well.
Yeah.
A good life and a good death are possible, but you're never going to get there if this is the shit you're internalizing.
That's right.
You just can't get there. You're never going to have the tools.
That's right.
If the world is against you.
Yeah. And when, and just hearing that you have this and, never do this, never do this, never, like, that sounds like an anxious, depressed mind to me.
it doesn't sound like a normal woman's experience.
Exactly.
It doesn't sound like a healthy person, right? Like
it's a magazine. Buy this magazine so you can figure out how not to feel these things.
That's
it's a consumerist.
32 tips on how to stop, hating yourself.
Exactly. No, well said. Well
right?
said.
Like, if you think that you're doing everything wrong and you also think that everything is your fault, you probably need to be in therapy, or you should go to a priest who will tell you that you're suffering from something called scrupulosity.
Ooh, there's a word for that?
Oh, yeah. Which is this glorious old spiritual term that means your conscience is hyperactive and you need to chill out. Like the priest will tell you, you're forgiven, it's okay, go home, pray some Hail Marys, you'll be all right. Like the word scruple originally meant like a little pebble in your shoe that like wears away at you as you're walking and it hurts you with every step. And then it became sort of abstracted to mean like your conscience is nagging at you over your failures. Everything you do, it's wrong. Every step hurts, right? Like, and so again, this is not feminism. Her complaining here. It's scrupulosity. It's like not good mental health, So I don't know why feminism would want to associate itself with bad mental health. I don't know.
Yeah, well, yeah. It's not giving anyone away a path to do anything productive. No. And I don't mean like industriousness productive. I mean like psychologically forming good ties, maturation productive.
Yeah. And also like whenever anyone says everything's my fault, what they're asking for is they're setting you up to be like, oh, it's not your fault. It's actually really not your fault at all. It's the system's rigged. Like it's inviting someone to come in and do that sort of faux therapy thing for you to help you feel better.
It's like confession, but you never get the payoff.
Exactly.
It's like,
yeah,
because in like confession you get the
absolution.
You get the absolution, but it's functional because like you are forgiven. Go out and do these things.
That's right. And then then here's your penance or your restitution. Go donate blood now. Go give to the soup kitchen. Go pray for someone else. Like
do an action that takes you out of yourself.
Exactly. Go make it about someone else.
Because the problem was being in yourself.
Exactly.
So we have a way to fix it.
Exactly. Especially for someone who's overly scrupulous. The priest will tell you your penance is to go and serve someone else and stop thinking about yourself.
And it works too.
And like don't come to confession tomorrow either because that's too much. Like wait a week, because you're thinking about yourself too much.
Right. And so this peaks here, right? Mm-hmm. I'm just so tired of watching myself and every single other woman tie herself into knots so that people will like us. And if all of that is also true for a doll just representing women, then I don't even know. I mean, the rhetoric of this is just so pitch perfect. I mean, the subtext of this, first of all, I'm just so tired of watching myself. So again,
self-examination.
And then it never gets anywhere. Then I don't even know. It literally concludes with an inability to form knowledge. Oh my god, I'm like so grad school now, but I can't help myself.
That's right.
I mean, like,
thought ends as you gaze at
it's
yourself
like a
forever.
Thought preventing cliche. You're talking about thought terminating cliches. Yeah. It's impossible. It's literally impossible to be a woman because I can't even think. I can't end a sentence with knowledge.
I don't even know.
Do women really think about being liked? I mean, we all think about being liked, okay? And we've established baseline of, increased negative emotion, neuroticism, right? But it is possible as a woman to get beyond this layer of adolescent, angsty. You can move beyond it. You don't never have a negative thought about yourself your whole life. But, if we can only get to I don't even know, we are doing something wrong. Right. In the context of mature adult relationships, women no longer think like Cosmo magazine headlines. There's a reason why those magazines feature grown women, but tweens read them. It's because the thinking in there is very adolescent.
Yeah.
Adulthood is not childhood.
Right.
We grow up and we make decisions and we make compromises.
Yep.
We form bonds of friendship and love and duty and service, and we hope for the best. Some of us pray. Many of us pray at least sometimes. This is just not feminism, this I don't even know. Mm-hmm. No more than a doll is a woman. If anyone felt moved by this speech, they may just be beyond help.
Well, I have to say, when we were in the theater and it was starting, I felt myself being like, oh,
Yeah, like I started to get on the train. I was
never on
and
the
then
train.
you were never on the train, but I started to get. I got a little bit like I started to enter into the movie when she gave that speech, just enough. But then when it ended, I kind of landed back down. I was like, wait a minute, you're bullshitting me. Like but I caught on for a minute, but then I had to.
Because really the far more relevant and far more genuine movement, like movement as like trajectory of the film, like where the film really moves or turns. Like, you know, catastrophe in Greek means turning point. Catastrophe, the turning of the line.
I did not.
Oh my god, this is like, I'm like,
you're so grad
this
school.
makes me want to go get another PhD. This is terrible. Somebody stop me. So the real peak of the film is where the ghost of Ruth Handler, and this, I looked it up, she died over 20 years ago in 2002. She gives figurative rebirth to Barbie, this time not as a doll, but as an adult human female. So the same way Barbie is never a baby, Barbara never is either. But Ruth gives her a preview of what it is to be human. It's all about relationships with women, with men, with your children. It's family and aging and eventually death. It's feeling, but not feeling as this self-directed, identitarian, hopelessly politicized, navel-gazing, this I don't even know. It's feeling as an embodied relational existence. It's coming into knowledge. Genuine, reliable knowledge. And Barbara is like, yes! I want that. Give me that. Even if I have to take some lumps with it.
That's right.
Even if it isn't perfect. Because it isn't perfect, right? It isn't plastic. It's real. The pains are real, but so are the joys. Choose life! Oh my god, I sound right? Right? Choose vaginas! Woo! Like, really? Like, you see how the two political sides are really saying the same thing?
Yeah.
This is the most pro-natalist film to come out of Hollywood in easily a generation. It necessarily disguised as a consumer's homage to diversity, inclusion, and equity, which, if you spell that out, die. Although I prefer, actually, I will confess, I'm doing this on purpose to say, because I'm making a point that die is the opposite of life, but usually I actually like to do diversity, equity, and inclusion, because it's day, God.
Oh, God. Oh, nice.
Anyway. So, brava, Greta Gerwig, fellow Barnard alumna.
Woo!
And, like, official call out, anytime you want to be on the show, you're welcome, but you have to bring a book, them's the rules.
Excellent. Oh, I love it. Well, let's, that's a good idea. Let's subtitle the film.
Okay, some hot takes. It's like the lightning round here.
Yes.
Okay. From girl night to gyno appointment, the story of belated sexual awakening.
Perfect. Barbie. Plastic Pinocchio. How a perpetually happy toy became a real girl by learning to cry and getting ready to die.
That's brilliant.
Or the short version, Barbie gets a vagina. All right, George, so tell me about the patriarchy in Barbie.
Oh my god. That's the password if you want to be subversive now. Distract the woke with that shibboleth.
Dangle patriarchy.
Yeah.
We're talking about patriarchy.
But then say what you really mean. I mean, honestly, I think the movie would have been way better had that word never been uttered. And I actually don't think it would have been that hard.
Right.
To do it.
Yeah, you could just show it. Yeah.
You could just show it. But they really had to throw the woke off the scent, I think. I think that's why. Because it really was South Park-esque when it was invoked.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Saying the word made the movie feel too obvious, too preachy, and it would have been better left unsaid. But if you use patriarchy, you're signaling you're not on the far right, so then you can say what you want. You're totally right about that. I think one of the best lines in the movie is when Ken admits, to be honest, when I found out the patriarchy wasn't about horses, I lost interest.
I love that line.
And he says it like a disappointed little boy. It's really sweet. And it's brilliant because it's actually this hint at virtue, at innocence, right? Like, Ken is not some evil overlord. He's not a bad boyfriend. He's not a far-right incel. He's a little boy who's interested in trucks, right? He likes cowboys and horses. And just like Barbie isn't a real woman, she's a girl's fantasy of a woman. So Ken is a little girl's fantasy of a man, which is actually kind of innocent boyhood, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm a mother of 3 boys. I grew up with 2 brothers, boys, are awesome. Boys are delightful, right? They have a pure masculine energy and focus and drive and curiosity that is so good. I mean, like, think of Tom Sawyer, Peter Pan, Peter Rabbit, Calvin and Hobbes. Like, this is good trouble. You know, I love it. I really love it. And Ken has some of this. So his kind of corruption in the real world, where he learns about the patriarchy, is shown by his admission later on that his heart was never in it. He doesn't want to oppress anybody. He just wants to be strong, right? Like, he wants to be admired and respected while being worthy of admiration and respect. And he wants to be seen by Barbie and to be valued as equal to her. And he really wants to ride a horse. You know, and these are not bad desires. These are good. You know, so the whole Kendom, patriarchy, Mojo Dojo Casa House, and a War of the Kens, all of that felt like a girl's caricature of boyness, which they don't understand and don't respect and don't like. Right? So the portrayal of the Kens instituting patriarchy is just a modern way of saying boys have cooties.
You are so right.
Isn't that right? It's boys have cooties. Oh, those gross boys. Look what they're doing. They're so dumb.
That is an excellent analysis.
That's what it is. It's cooties. It's cootification. So there is no meaningful critique of real men in the real world embedded in the movie's depiction of patriarchy. There isn't. There just isn't. So, you know, so I think the conservatives, you know, overreacted by taking this literally as if the movie is anti-men, and they just missed the joke.
Yeah.
They missed the joke.
Yeah.
So I don't think conservatives need to be offended that it's anti-men at all. So.
Also, technically, Barbie Land cannot be a patriarchy because there are no fathers.
You're right, because there's no penises.
And the women are getting the Kens to fight one another by purposely fomenting sexual jealousy.
Which actually makes no sense, because you can't really have sexual jealousy if you have no sex.
Yeah, and so those two forces are, in the real world, those two forces are the opposite, right? It's bad enough to whine about patriarchy, but I can't even respect this argument when the word itself is abused.
Yeah.
Patriarchy is not about male dominance. I mean, like, clap it out. I mean, you know, men are physically strong in any society. No society is going to change that. So patriarchy is a system, one among others you could possibly think of, that constrains, is an attempt to constrain male sexual dominance.
Yes.
Is it perfect? Fuck no. But nothing is. Trade-offs.
That's right.
No solutions, only trade-offs. So it's like, I mean, patriarchy is designed to have a system where women can't just go around moving among the men, antagonizing them to hurt each other. That's
right.
part of the plan.
It's bad for everybody.
It's part of the plan.
That's right.
Because we all could do that. We all could walk around, like, and hypergamy is what results when you just let men, like, do that. It makes no...
Right. You get one dude with the harem, and everyone else is
and then you get the incels, like, you know, coming to all our rallies, like, you know, trying to throw, like, eggs at women who want to say, keep men out of women's prisons. I mean...
Right. The good kind of patriarchy is trying to prevent, like, the hypergamy of Tinder, right? Like, that's what it's trying to avoid.
And it says to women, like, if you want to behave like this, there are costs. Yeah. Not just to you, but to others.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. All right, George, tell me about the matriarchy.
It's satire. Barbie Land is satire because it's no more realistic than the presentation of the real world is in this film. Mm-hmm. And we can talk about why. But I kept thinking of Dworkin's very non-satire plea that feminism should not merely consist of role reversal and women adopting the attitudes of men.
Right.
Like, Dworkin is very specific. She says we can't just switch places in the hierarchy.
Exactly.
And start mimicking the behaviors of men. Of course, she lost that battle. But she's right. And at first, I was a little dismayed that the film seemed to be taking that idea seriously. Mm. That Barbie was a functional reversal of a sort of fallen human world. Right. Like, we could, like, restore justice by having an all-female Supreme Court. I mean, but that's not serious. I mean...
It's not. I don't think the movie was actually trying to say, like, yeah, this would be great, even though all the Barbies are, like, happy clappy at the end, and Alan is like, I'm so happy being with the girls. Like, no, it is satirized. It's shown to be not really a victory.
And also in a world without real mechanical forces, like no liquid, like no physics, it's funny how that aligns perfectly with a world in which women can do all the jobs. Because it takes out the issue of, like, the physical world in which men can't do all the physical jobs.
That's right. That's very interesting. Barbie Land is anti-physics. I mean, right? Like she floats.
It's very purposeful because children's heads are like that too. I mean, there's no incongruity with that.
Just do whatever. Yeah, you're just picking them up and moving them around.
But I mean, like literally, the car doesn't have an engine, so there's no auto mechanics.
That's right.
And like all the trades that you see the women bringing their pink garbage bins to the curb, but like who drives the garbage truck? I mean,
right.
So it's this classic, and like that line where like, where do the Kens even live? I mean, that to me is like I read that as a sort of subtle acknowledgement of like women, careerist women who are worried about being thin and not asking for money and not, that very narrow band of what Murray would call the new elites, that very narrow band of women doesn't see the world that depends on the labor of men.
That's right.
From coal to garbage.
Right. The Kens and
to
their work is invisible.
Everything in Barbie Land is already like magically built.
Right. So it's like the men are totally superfluous. They're beach. Right?
Yeah.
They have nothing to do. We don't even know where they go at night, but we don't want them in our girls' night. They're totally superfluous.
Yeah, like I literally.
And they should just get over it. Yeah.
Like what kind of society is like where you don't know where the other half of the human population like? That's like super dystopian. I mean, on some level,
it is. Yeah, dystopia in pink. Right. It's that matriarchy. They're not celebrating it. They show it as so over the top, so you kind of go, ooh.
Well, I mean, to say that the Supreme Court should be all women is exactly like the same argument as saying it should I mean, like the reason there were no women on the Supreme Court is because women weren't taken intellectually seriously, and so if you have no men on the Supreme Court, that's saying the same thing.
Right. So yeah, it's saying let's have all women on the Supreme Court. It's again, just like I said, the stuff about Ken is like, oh, boys have cooties. This is girls rule, boys drool. It's that. It's the childish. We win. You suck. It's just that.
It's the literalization of the feminist slogan I grew up with, which was anything a boy can do, a girl can do better.
Oh yeah.
Which is great to internalize the sense that you're not, because I think it was important for my mother's generation to tell that to their daughters. It was vital because my mother was in that generation. I was told you can't go to law school.
Right. And if it's that sort of like overcompensating to just get your foot in the door, I get that. Like we've read, I think Dworkin does that kind of language. Helen Gurley Brown does that kind of like the overblown rhetoric that just gets you a spot at the table. But like you just can't keep talking and thinking that way.
Right.
Like it has its place to like,
It's rhetoric. It's not
rhetoric
reality.
to push down the door. Exactly.
Right.
And then the rhetoric needs to be set aside to be like, okay, we're here. We're in.
Right.
All right.
Now we
got to renegotiate this.
Right.
Like now let's talk about equality.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So exactly. I mean, the matriarchy is satirized just like the patriarchy is satirized in Barbie. And so the movie's ending in which the Barbies take back Kendom and restore it as Barbie Land, where all the Barbies are in charge, the Kens are superfluous. That ending is not a real win, right? It shows that both matriarchy and patriarchy, as competitive visions, are futile and sterile.
Yeah.
Right? And we know the Barbie's victorious matriarchal restoration isn't the point of the movie because Barbie leaves afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, if it was paradise, she'd stay for those endless girls' nights. And do you remember that really poignant moment where Barbie apologizes to Ken for having all these girls' nights and, like, never having a night just for Ken? Like, she acknowledges that she's hurt him, that she's been selfish and oblivious. Like, it was an understated moment, but I think it was really important in showing that the sisterhood isn't enough. Like, Barbie needs a man, and men are worth something. And she was wrong to just be like, whatever, to him. I like that moment. And so Barbie votes with her feet. Like, she gets out of Dodge. She leaves plastic femtopia, right? And she chooses to become a real woman with vagina and a uterus, amongst other real men and women in the world who have to learn to reconcile and cooperate. All right.
Okay.
Tell me about childbearing.
Where do I even start? This was another big theme of the movie. I mean, did you know that there was a pregnant Barbie? I missed that when the actual pregnant Barbie.
I didn't know that.
The toy.
Yeah.
And we know that it probably had a very short moment. But there was, and there she is in Barbie Land. I mean, I love that about this movie. This is very post, almost post irony in the fact that the film purposely looks toward the cringier bits of its history. Like the more cringier, the better.
Yeah.
And so you can't look at this doll, Midge, I think her name was, without the post-ironic narrator, Helen Mirren, agreeing with you that a pregnant doll is too creepy, too uncanny, and that's why it was discontinued. But what more succinct irony about consumerism that there is a pregnant doll that doesn't sell.
That's right. Pregnancy doesn't make money.
You can't sell what the species literally depends on for its perpetuation.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, that's weird, right? And also the backstory about the Skipper doll who escaped before.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, like, totally, like, it's not delved into at all. They don't even visualize it. It's just a line. It's just a throw-off line. Yeah. She attempted, it's very 30 Rock, right?
Yeah.
She attempted to teach toddlers to surf. That's the throwaway line, right? So, obviously dangerous and inappropriate. But, like, let's do the grad school thing on it. So, Skipper doesn't know what children are. And the reason she doesn't know what children are is because there are no babies. There are no children in Barbie Land.
Right. Even though she's supposed to be the babysitter.
Well, right. Exactly, right? So that's impossible in the real world to not know a baby.
Right.
As everyone has to start off as a baby.
Right.
So it's this child-free paradise whose citizens become dangerous in the real world because they don't actually know where babies come from or what babies are, right? Yeah. In some ways, I really think, as we were driving over from the movie, I was saying this to you. Yep. I think that in some ways, this generation is a generation of skippers. Mm-hmm. Like, more young people than ever before do not experience younger children, whether it's siblings, cousins, whatever, or babysitter kids, right?
Yep.
Before they themselves have kids. Like, my inner grad student is screaming at me that Skipper taking the toddler surfing is like, you can read below that the subtext of ignorant parents taking their children to have their puberty blocked. They are doing harm because of their ignorance.
Yeah.
If you don't spend a lot of time with children, you don't get that they are naive and gullible, and you have to basically save them from themselves constantly until they're, say, like, 25.
Yes.
So Barbie leaving Ken is a reversal of leaving your marriage and child to find yourself. It's leaving yourself to find a sex life, and we presume a child, and you're led by your vagina. It's so pro-human and pro-natalist, and yet all the wokesters are going to be fooled by the surface homage to the traditional, oh, women have it so hard, I'm sure more porn and sex work will help free us from patriarchy. You go, girl! Feminism. I mean, like, they're going to just, like, slide right along that same old tired route. But really what's going on is this pro-vagina message, right? I'm optimistic enough to hope that Barbara's vagina will lead her to a sex life and a child through marriage. But it'll have to be the one that recuperates the Pride and Prejudice stakes. Like that moment where it was like chronically depressed Barbie or like whatever.
Yeah.
There's another post-ironic, if we made a Barbie out of a real woman.
Right. She'd be watching Pride and Prejudice all day. And then lying in bed.
And
that's what she really wants.
And that, I've written a post about this actually. I feel like I did my homework even without knowing it was homework. That novel is all about marriages. It's about the joy, the possible joy that results from choosing the absolutely right marriage for you. And in this movie, the marriage between the mother, Gloria, we could dig into that name choice, and her daughter's father,
who's never even named, I don't think.
I wonder if he's named in the credits. Let's see the movie again. This marriage is so unbelievable that you almost wonder if they purposely made the husband lamer than even Ken, who has no penis. That's a really low bar, because they didn't want to be accused of portraying marriage in the real world in a positive light. So, like, this is the setup. He has a teenager with a wife who is a native Spanish speaker, and he's still struggling to pronounce the word for pen in Spanish. Bolígrafo. That's pen, I'm pretty sure. I mean, that makes him retarded. Because, I mean, their kid is what, like 13?
She's like 12. Yeah. Like 12 years, man.
I mean, no. If you either have learned Spanish or you would have given up. But you wouldn't be sitting there with, like, Duolingo, unable to get the emphasis right on a simple Spanish word.
Yeah. So,
I mean, okay, what? Are we supposed to not notice that and, like, accept the woke points for making it an inter-ethnic marriage? I can't say interracial because Hispanic's not a race. But I wouldn't marry that guy. Right. I mean, literally, his wife has more connection to a Barbie in an imaginary alternative universe called Barbie Land than she does with this man. I mean, I was convinced until, like, almost the end of the film. Like, until the moment where it's like, what about Dad? I was convinced she was a single mother. I just took that for granted.
Right. I mean, she functionally is in the realm of the movie.
Right.
Again, he's superfluous, just like the Kens are superfluous. Yeah.
I mean, there's just no possible way to incite envy of married women if that's what you're missing. I mean, she does need him like a fish needs a bicycle. Not at all. That's the feminist. Yeah. It's almost as if feminism's most frequent thought has become its most present reality. It's like we say, you and I say all the time that feminism has failed, and I'm beginning to think maybe it just worked too well.
Yeah.
Right? My body, my choice. Oh yeah, I don't have to go through puberty. I don't need tits.
Right.
It worked too well.
That's right.
So again, though, here you're paying lip service to the woke platitudes about like how men are useless, because otherwise you wouldn't be allowed to make the movie at all.
Yeah, but it's like, but when they kind of say it out loud like that, it looks really dumb. It looks like I don't even know. Like it looks like not thought. So it's like Greta Gerwig is extremely intelligent.
Yeah,
she's not stupid. So when she shows these feminists, I don't know if she's married. She's with Noah Baumbach as her partner. I don't know if they're married.
Oh.
But they wrote the movie together.
Oh.
Yeah. But so like she's smart. So when they present the feminist idea just sort of like on its face, and you go, that's really stupid. You know she's critiquing it. She's not like thumbs up, yeah.
Okay.
Men are dumb. No, she's showing that when you present men as dumb, that idea is dumb.
I mean, I think you're probably right, but I mean, my reaction as I was watching the movie was to be pissed off about that.
Yeah.
I can't take a woman seriously as a feminist if she's married to an obvious douche with whom there is no connection of any recognizable kind.
Yeah. No
emotional engagement, no sexual attention, and no intellectual respect.
Yeah.
We're brainwashing young women to think men suck.
Yeah.
When you and I know that men can be absolutely amazing.
Yes.
I read this book once about public education and how there's a lot of people think in hindsight that it was set up by the robber barons to ensure that nobody could follow in their footsteps, because it would regiment young minds into thinking non-creatively, so they couldn't, like, if you read things about the early robber barons, they were like, they were running around at 5, like, hustling.
Yeah.
They were just completely, like, free-form, self-made boys. And turned into self-made men.
Yeah.
And so the goal was, now that they had all these monopolies, they wanted to make sure nobody could climb up the ladder after them and dethrone them. So, this is why I say,
it's interesting. They want to tamp down that good trouble.
This version of feminism is the equivalent of that. We are pulling up the ladder to emotional success behind us. But instead of like preserving something for us, in this case, it's just we're suiciding the next generation. We're harming her. It's harmful. Wow. So we've got to go out there and tell young women that these cults, transhumanism, bullshit feminism, are leading them astray, and they need to listen to us and just be normal. And I mean that in mathematical, not a moral term. Like the norm is where like people are because the water's better in here. Like, the water's warm here. That's just right. Be normal and be happy.
Right.
And like this message that your husband is essentially a useless appendage who can't say the word in Spanish for pen. I mean, this is deleterious. I mean, like getting married to the right person is the best thing I've ever done in my life.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, I'm totally with you on this, and I want to repeat what you said at the beginning of that because it's so good. Right, Barbie leaving Ken is a reversal of leaving your marriage and child to find yourself, which is a clever nod to Ibsen's A Dollhouse, where Nora leaves her family. Right, it's leaving yourself to find a sex life and a child led by your vagina. I just love that. And Barbie breaks up with Ken not because the movie is anti-man or anti-family, but because Ken is a plastic child's toy with no penis, and Barbie needs a real man. And so, and part of why I too have hope that the trajectory Greta Gerwig is hinting at in that final scene where Barbara goes to the gynecologist is one of marriage and motherhood, is that there's this beautiful montage of memories, like these scenes of girls and women of all ages in family settings, laughing and playing and dancing and growing up and growing old, right? And Barbie is joining this stream of mothers and daughters, like you mentioned earlier. She takes the last name of her creator, Ruth Handler, becoming Barbara Handler, so she's got a mother now. And there's this sense that leaving Barbie Land behind is like entering puberty and leaving childhood, right? It's being initiated into the mysteries of sex and procreation. Mm-hmm. And so, interestingly, that ending is quite subversive of the film's over-the-top opening, right? In which these little girls smash and throw their baby dolls away, right? To the music of 2001: A Space Odyssey.
What's being smashed in the original? Like totems? I saw that movie
like
once.
They're throwing rocks or something.
But what are they destroying? Like the gods?
I don't remember if they're destroying anything. I just remember they're kind of like, monkeying around.
All right, show notes.
Yeah, I can't quite remember. But, so the movie begins with this symbolic destruction of babies and the way that little girls mimic their mothers by playing at caregiving, right? By loving their baby dolls. But the movie ends with this sexless toy becoming sexed, with plastic becoming flesh, right? It's an incarnation with the stereotypical trappings.
Quite literally.
Yeah, quite literally, right? The stereotypical trappings of femininity are giving way to female anatomy whose purpose is sexual union and procreation. So the movie opens by sneering at motherhood, and it wraps up by opening the door to motherhood as a possibility, even in a world full of threats, violence, suffering, and cellulite.
Bravo.
All right, so a couple more cultural references.
So you spoiled this one.
Oh,
with
sorry.
The scene where Ken confesses he doesn't know who he is without Barbie. I swear, I'm gonna bet
you called it. You thought of it.
I'm gonna bet my bottom dollar that that's inspired by A Doll's House by Ibsen, where Nora tells Torvald, why she has to leave because she doesn't know who she is, and it's clever when the roles are reversed.
Yeah.
It hits all the right notes. I mean, I'm like one could write a paper on this.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if this is the scene that you're thinking of. I thought it might be.
Well, I'm not sure either because I've read that. I think the last time I read that play was in grad school, which means it's too far away.
So since we're nerds, let's read it. All right. I'll be Nora.
Okay, you be Nora.
Okay. It's true, Torvald. When I lived at home with Papa, he used to tell me his opinion about everything, and so I had the same opinion. If I thought differently, I had to hide it from him, or he wouldn't have liked it. He called me his little doll, and he used to play with me just as I played with my dolls. Then I came to live in your house.
That's no way to talk about our marriage.
I mean, when I passed out of Papa's hands into yours, you arranged everything to suit your own tastes, and so I came to have the same tastes as yours, or I pretended to. I'm not quite sure which. Perhaps it was a bit of both, sometimes one and sometimes the other. Now that I come to look at it, I've lived here like a pauper, simply from hand to mouth. I've lived by performing tricks for you, Torvald. That was how you wanted it. You and Papa have committed a grievous sin against me. It's your fault that I've made nothing of my life.
So, I mean, this hits all the things. It's like money, but you can't ask for it. I mean, this is like, I need to have my own this, that. And it's all the context of dolls. And now in the scene with Ken and Barbie, the sex roles are reversed, but you're literally in a doll's house. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's too good. Mm-hmm. So good for you for getting the quote. Because we are nerds at Red FM.
So you've got Nora blaming first her father and then her husband for treating her like a doll, for making her derivative, and playing out their desires through her while she's passive and loses her sense of self. Right? And ironically, this is what stereotypical Barbie has been doing to Ken all this time. Right? There's a hierarchy in Barbie land, and she's above him. Ken is her doll. She plays with him and discards him. She picks him up and she puts him down. She's happy to see him, and she's happy to forget he exists, right? And in Barbie land, he's nothing without her. And that's actually what makes him vulnerable to the patriarchy nonsense. His horse and beer-fueled rebellion is like Nora leaving home, trying to find an identity after having been someone else's plaything, right? He has to discover that he's Knuff. Right?
I'm getting that sweatshirt. It's fucking brilliant.
Great. And in the context of the movie, I don't think it's trying to be anti-relationship. I think it's saying, don't be codependent and enmeshed. That's my thought.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it's that was one of my favorite scenes in the film.
Yeah, where they're talking it out.
Where they're talking it out.
And he's like crying on
I
the bed.
don't know who I am without you.
I know.
And like, did you notice that when they got arrested in LA in the beginning, the little placards they put in front of them, it was like hers says Barbie and his says and Ken.
And Ken. Oh!
And he brings that up. He's
yes.
like, "There's no me. I am nothing without you." Like, because it's he's and Ken.
That's
and
right.
so being Knuff is about reclaiming.
He's
losing the end, and she explained it to him. It's like there's Barbie and there's Ken. Like she explains it to him like that. So.
Yeah, I actually thought that was okay. I thought that was
right because it's the message is we don't have to be codependent.
Right.
You can exist on your own.
Yeah.
And then of course it's the it's almost like it's sort of refreshing the feminist pablum about you don't need a man to define you. And it's like it's new enough and novel enough and sort of tongue in cheek enough that it actually makes the feminist version of that like listenable.
Yeah. Right. To say to Ken like you don't need a woman to define you.
Right. Right.
You're good enough as you are, Ken. We love you.
But of course, like, the joke is on Barbie Land as a whole, because meanwhile she's gonna go.
Yeah.
You know.
She's getting out.
She's gonna go become a real woman.
Yeah.
Okay. We talked about this one too already. The Pride and Prejudice movie. That is the novel about satisfactory mate choice. Mm-hmm. I mean, unless you're asleep, you recognize that as a giant flag planted in the name of heterosexual marriage.
Yes.
I mean, this movie, like, I'm surprised somebody could come out. I mean, it's not a movie that denies that, like, because Alan is, like, supposed to be the gay dude.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
So it's not a movie that denies, like, homosexuality.
Right.
But it doesn't privilege it.
Right.
It doesn't apologize for being heteronormative.
Right.
I mean, we shouldn't say heteronormative because that problematizes the norm, and I don't agree with problematizing the norm. Right. I just, that is not my politics. So that's not a coincidence. Like, no fucking way is that movie, because every girl in that movie theater, every woman in that movie theater has seen that movie at least twice.
Yeah, Pride and Prejudice?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
At least twice.
More than that, yeah.
I mean, this is what girls masturbate to when their sexual awakening finds expression in the complexification of the narrative they've been told forever.
Yep.
A fairy tale wedding between a charming prince and a special young woman.
Yep.
Women want sex in the context of admiration, loyalty, and love.
Yes.
And God help us, we can't even seem to be able to say this in our culture. Instead, we get Gloria's vacuous speech.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, we've lost the vocabulary somewhere. It's insane.
Yeah.
So you can only allude to it.
Right.
You can only, like, put a chick flick reference in as an explicit subtext of
that's right.
what women really want.
Right, but it's an Easter egg. Like, it's full.
It's an Easter egg.
That just seeing that flashed on the screen, like, I see that and I know all of what that means.
Yeah.
It's just, it's super loaded.
It's overdetermined in the best way, because that's what we're supposed to, I mean, we didn't talk about this in the Dworkin episode, but, like, and I don't want to get too detailed into it because I don't want to make us uncomfortable, but, like, you don't really control what you find sexually arousing. And so if you have a culture, like, they know this because they've done studies. It's gross that they did these studies, but they did these studies because, I mean, it was the 70s. And, like, so there's a physiology of sexual arousal. Mm-hmm. So you can have a culture that uses Pride and Prejudice to get women juicy, or you can have a culture that uses Deep Throat. It will work.
Okay.
You will get there in the end.
Right.
But the different neurons will fire on that pathway.
Yeah, and those are not morally equal pathways.
They're not virtually equal. Virtuous. How do you say virtuous they're not equally virtuous paths.
There you go. Yeah.
Or ethical, because I don't think porn is ethical. Mm-hmm. So for me, when you see that clip of that movie, what you are saying is that women deserve virtuous paths to sexual arousal. That's literally what you're saying.
Yeah. That's right.
And we can't talk about that in our culture. Because if you say, I don't want to read about, like, body strippers and rape, like, women read those because they get aroused. Like, we have to be able to say that. And that's because there's a physiology involved. And, like,
right.
It's not that it's not real. Mm-hmm. It's not that it doesn't occur. Mm-hmm. It's that you're rewiring something with a cost.
Right.
You're coming at it you're coming at it. I mean, so Pride and Prejudice is saying women deserve good sex.
Right.
Literally.
Yeah.
Like, good on the way to sex.
Yes. That's right.
So, and we can't talk about that anymore. We've got trans women or women in sex work as real work. And that's not that. Like,
no.
It's just...
Right. And Pride and Prejudice is all problematized, right? And patriarchal and all the things. But
I mean, but yeah, and so the movie inserts it in a way where you cannot not immediately react saying, oh, I like that.
I love that. Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Exactly. And I love that version of Pride and Prejudice. So good. Like, that one with Colin Firth. Like, part of how I knew I married a good man was that he also loves that version.
Yeah.
He's seen it multiple times. Like, he'd seen it before. He introduced me to it. He saw it first.
He was obsessed with the line where he's like, I think it's that movie.
He says,
a man always has enough time to do his duty.
Oh, really?
Is that movie, or is that the other one? Is that or is that Pride and Prejudice, or is that Sense and Sensibility? Anyway, whatever.
I can't remember.
Same idea.
But yes. Yeah, and part of
Hot Virtue.
Hot Virtue.
Hot Virtue.
Yes.
We don't need trad wives necessarily. We need hot virtue. Hot virtue is the way of saying it without contextualizing in a conservative, quote unquote, context.
There you go. Oh, I like it.
I like
All
it
right,
too.
I like it. Okay, so yeah, here I'll say what I was going to say about Hot Virtue. So part of what's so great about it is that Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy can't come together as a couple until they've both grown in virtue.
Exactly.
Because they've got that classic, the marriage proposal happens halfway through and it goes all wrong because they're not ready. They're not mature enough yet. They're not virtuous enough yet to be together. And so the marriage proposal and acceptance scene at the end, between them, it really sounds as much like a confession of sin as a confession of love. Because they're both desperately apologizing to one another for all of their vices and failures, for their pride and their prejudice.
Yeah, it's named after the sins they have to overcome.
Exactly, right?
Foibles, I suppose.
Yeah.
We don't have to use the word sin if we don't want.
Sure. Failures, shortcomings, there you go. And that is the precondition for them coming to intimacy and to reconciliation and being able to admit their love and commit to one another. So that story shows that virtue is the precondition for reconciling men and women. So, back to Barbie. So hence the patriarchy and the matriarchy, both Barbie Land and Kendom, are stupid because they're competitive and immature and they're not grappling with the need for virtue.
Okay. We're going to close with this cultural reference.
Okay.
This film has to pass the Bechdel test, right? Do you know what the Bechdel test is?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, explain it for us.
Do you know what the Bechdel test is? Do your homework! Okay. So this is actually in the dictionary now. It is a set of criteria used as a test to evaluate a work of fiction, such as a film, on the basis of its inclusion and representation of female characters. So the usual criteria are as follows. 1, that at least 2 women are featured. 2, that these women talk to each other. And 3, that they discuss something other than a man. I mean, this is really interesting, right? Because 1 and 2 we can take for granted because there's a zillion women in the film. I mean, they happen to all be named the same thing, which we could talk about. But or most of them are named the same thing. They obviously talk to each other all the time. Mm-hmm. But 3 is where it gets interesting, right? Because they discuss something other than a man. And I think the film fails the spirit of this test, and that's the point.
Oh.
Because I'm sure the women have plenty of conversations where they do not discuss a man, but it's because there's no sexual attention, so there's no motivation to do so.
That's right.
I mean, the accusation that the Bechdel test exemplifies is that women only talk about men. All they do is talk about who they want to fuck, essentially. It's the sort of...
instead of and can, it's they're the and woman, right? They're the appendage to... The point is the man.
I don't have any thoughts in my head except who I'm trying to be with. I'm worried about, does he like me, does he not like me, did he call, will he call?
Right. That
kind of thing. That's the critique. The test was set up to say, you should be able to make a movie where women talk about things that isn't about something else that's about something else than a man.
Yeah.
So this movie succeeds, but it's failing in the spirit because they're discussing men. They're discussing patriarchy.
Yes.
They're constantly talking about men as a class. And I feel like that's not an improvement. So
Barbie fails.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like technically it has to pass. I mean, there's I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think maybe, the movie as a whole maybe doesn't pass, but if I think of Barbie herself, I don't know. I feel like her sights get broadened. Her vision gets bigger, and she's having.
I mean, there's moments when she goes to Weird Barbie's house. They're talking about existential things.
Yes. Right. And she kind of has her red pill moment, but it's actually the Birkenstock.
Right, and the high heel and the Birkenstock. She's like, I don't want the Birkenstock. And then at the end of the film, you notice she gets out of the car with the Birkenstocks.
That was great.
Yes.
That was great. It's give me 2 feet flat on the ground of reality, right? Which is literally grounded.
Literally.
Right? It's literally grounded.
I feel like this movie puts us at a moment where the Bechdel test no longer serves in a way.
Huh.
Because the Bechdel test is saying, it's a critique saying, filmmakers represent women as being shallow and too male focused. Mm-hmm. But really, the way of overcoming it isn't having a conversation not about men, It's having a life where men are taken seriously, even if you don't talk about them all the time. It's it's having a better husband than Believe It for Boy.
Yes. Yeah. So overall, do we give it how many thumbs up?
The film?
The film.
I think everybody has to go see the Barbie film.
I think it's worth seeing. I think it's important. And whether you love Barbie or hate Barbie, and even whether you enjoy the movie or not, it's important to see, because I think it has these turning point, this catastrophe. Like, we are in a catastrophe moment, kind of. It's a parable with the trappings, the woke trappings on the outside, but then this very, interesting message, this gem of a message in the middle that not everyone is getting. But go see it.
Go see it. Yeah, and I mean, it's also a moment of, like, it's the return of America post-COVID. I mean, this is where all the, people wearing masks outside in California are actually going to the movies again.
Yeah.
I mean, they're probably wearing their masks in there, but this is the summer where America said, we're going to have a normal summer again.
We're going to have a Barbenheimer.
We're going to have a Barbenheimer summer. Like, we're going to go sit in the movie theater for hours and hours on end.
Yeah. And
enjoy ourselves.
That's right.
So it's a coming back to life moment. It's a,
It's juicy.
It's juicy. And that.
Let's end on that note.
All
right.
See you next time, people.
Bye-bye.